going to start off this Wednesday with one of my favorite guests, and I mean that sincerely, Rick. It's always a pleasure to sit with you. Ric Peri is the Director of Government Affairs for the Aircraft Electronics Association. Always a good chance, always a pleasure to chat with you, Rick.
It's great seeing you.
Thanks for coming and kicking off our Wednesday program in a good way. I know you've got a lot of stuff you've been working on. People, well, you got your Part 23 right out of the way. What have you guys been doing? So, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I want to start off with the tech incubators that have become one of the things that AEA has really started to focus on in an effort to get new products, new ideas out into the world of aviation. So bring us up to speed on that program.
Okay, well, we were fortunate to be able to do the first run last year in August. And set it up. Had a half a dozen companies came in, demonstrated some phenomenal technologies. I mean, you look around the convention floor here and you see all the new products, or Monday with the new products. The incubator brings in crazy stuff. And I mean, beautiful, really great, but they don't know what to do with it. They're producing it, they may be producing it for the experimental community, or they may be producing it for the light sport aircraft, but they want to get to that next market. And as we know, you want to confuse people, you want to watch the anxiety go up. You mentioned those three letters, our favorite three letters.
STC.
Or FAA.
Or FAA,
and all of a sudden everybody gets all panicked and goes, oh, I can never do that. And so we created the incubator to demystify the FAA, to demystify the certification process. And so it's an 8-hour, it's a one-day program. You have the ability to bring your product in, to demonstrate it to the FAA and ask direct questions. This is my widget, this is what I want to build. What do you think the path would be? The FAA gives presentations on the regulations, what they expect, how they expect to see that. We have myself and other regulatory people who are explaining the regulations to them. We have the FAA who is working on a risk-based production now. So all of these things come together in order to demystify what looks like that insurmountable mountain in front of you. And it's been successful. We've got a couple of the products from the incubator last year that are in the certification process right now, making progress in that, so that's pretty exciting. The next one is in August, it's on our website, and we're looking forward to the next year, and all they have to do is log on to the AEA's website, aea.net, and they can register for the incubator.
When you look at the number of companies you had present to you last year, was that a good, comfortable number for you to work with in a one-day, 8-hour session, or would you like to see 15 companies come and make presentations?
So we did it intentionally small. I think the one-on-one, the personal touch there, we're doing it at the AEA convention, or I'm sorry, the AEA headquarters office, which for those that have been there, the Derby Center, it's where all of our training takes place. It has limited space. As long as we stay within, say, 10 or 15 new applicants, we'll probably continue to hold it there at the AEA headquarters office in Lee Summit. I would love to have 15 and have to get a hotel space to make room for it. I would not want to grow it to the point of getting it impersonal. The key element of this is that personal one-on-one, both with AEA and AEA staff, as well as FAA and FAA staff, and the designees involved. And so, you know, could I do a room of 35? Not in a one-day format. You know, the format we did was we literally were doing somewhere between 40 and 50-minute presentations with 30-minute breaks, just to allow the exchange between the parties.
Is there any participation among some of your existing members with these companies that are coming up? And I know that this incubator is not a Shark Tank, it's not for a financial reward, but do you give some of your existing companies that have been successful in that process an opportunity to sort of mentor these new companies as they come up?
We did that. So you know, part of this process is it's an insurmountable mountain. So having a successful incubator or successful entrepreneur give a testimonial that the mountain is manageable really helped a lot. But we really don't pair them up. And part of the reason is that we don't want to facilitate sharing of ideas.
Okay.
Some incubators, some entrepreneurs might be a little hesitant to attend a session where some of the large manufacturers of similar types of equipment would be, and then 6 months later come out with a similar product. So we don't want to get into that environment.
Sure.
So the incubators are the incubators. Typically we're looking for companies that have already exhibited at EAA's AirVenture up in Wisconsin, or the Sun and Fun in Florida. So they've already made their product public, but are ready for the next step.
Let's move over and talk a little bit about the Part 23 rewrite that was finally wrapped up last year. What have been the effects of that sea change, for lack of a better term, in how things are certified and how products get into airplanes?
So it's interesting because that question was recently asked at a forum in Washington. And the person who answered the question answered it from a technical Part 23 new aircraft perspective. Because that's what everybody thinks. Everybody thinks, oh, Part 23, when's the new airplane coming? Well, there are a couple of aircraft in the developmental stages that are being certified or intended to be certified under this new progressive process, to where the methods of compliance is much more broad than it had been historically. But you have to go back. You have to go back to the philosophy of the 23 rewrite, the safety continuum, okay? The fact that the general public understands and expects the risk in experimental aircraft. They understand and expect the risk in light sport aircraft. They understand and expect the risk in entry-level Part 23 aircraft. And they understand that all of these are much different than the highest level Part 25 aircraft. So it's the safety continuum. We, in this sector, in this segment of industry, have been reaping these benefits since 2014. So while the Part 23 rewrite became effective in August, we're on the 5th generation of new products that are directly related to the philosophy that led to the 23 rewrite.
And so, are you seeing that there's a more rapid push to, or more rapid acceptance of new products that are coming through this new Part 23 in your segment of the industry and getting them into airplanes faster?
Oh my goodness, yes. So understand that there's, in the retrofit world, you have two elements that you have to consider. One is the ability to install stuff, the alteration itself, and one is the product that I'm installing. Okay. So when I say the 5th generation, I'm talking 5th generation of products, starting in 2014 with the angle of attack indicator. It was a noted safety issue, loss of control. A recommended solution, low-cost AOA indicators, industry consensus standard to support the AOA indicator, and the FAA needed to find a mechanism to approve the part. Okay, and so that was generation 1, 2014. From there, we created the NORSEE policy, and we have a lot of NORSEE products here on the floor today. You had the Garmin G5, or the EAA STC Dynon D10. That's arguably the 2nd generation item. 3rd generation is the NORSEE policy. 4th generation was fundamentally what EAA did, but moved to the next level. So EAA was the applicant and the type certificate holder, STC holder, And as a function of that, they were able to identify this commercial part as having certified it through the STC, created the opportunity to move that forward. Well, that works really well, except that it really didn't empower Dynon to do anything. That was an EAA product at that point. So the next generation, Garmin was able to take the philosophy that EAA used, take it to the next level in a PM8 article. So it was a manufacturer applied approved part. And then at Oshkosh last year, we had 4 or 5 different applicants for new autopilot systems. And so all 5 of these generations, these products, are a direct result of the philosophy of 23. Having said that, we're still challenged with the installation issues. Those really haven't changed much.
It was interesting because we were talking with John Uzakai at lunch from Aspen Avionics the other day, and he said that he was beginning to hear from his from people that he was behind the curve because he did not have a PMA product.
Yeah.
That's kind of the shift in the thinking about the certified, for lack of a better term, product and the PMA product.
Okay, so let me correct that misconception. Okay, PMA and TSO, from an approved parts perspective, are exactly the same. So when people go, oh, TSO or PMA, from an FAA approval process, they are exactly the same. The difference is, under a TSO article, they are designed to an FAA specification. The specification is the highest level of intended installation.
Okay.
So the FAA produces a specification, a technical standard order for altimeters with the highest level of installation to be in mid-level jets.
Okay.
It's fully compatible to the smallest of pistons, but it has to be certified to the very highest level of intended use.
Okay.
So that's the TSO. The difference is, when you look at these 5 generations of parts, their market was not the mid-level jet. Their market was simply to bridge from the upper end of light sport aircraft or experimental into the very lower end of Part 23. So their market was 172s, 182s, PA-28, stuff like that. So that was the certification level. It's still downward compatible.
Sure.
But the line is at Class 1 or Class 2 Part 23, not Class 4 Part 23. Okay? So it's simply the intended market that's different. You know?
Right. You mentioned, I'm going to switch gears again because you mentioned the word install, which brings me to the ADS-B deadline, which is still January 1st, 2020. Where are you seeing that process at this point as far as your installers and the equipment suppliers are concerned?
Well, let me look at my crystal ball.
You're usually pretty good with that, Rick.
Exactly where I expected it to be.
Okay.
Not a bit above and not a bit below. It's exactly where I expected it. Anytime we have a mandate, and I'll steal some words from a friend of mine. Do you pay your taxes early?
No.
Do you want to step up and pay your 2020 taxes today? No, of course not.
No.
So for those operators who simply comply with the regulation, they're looking for a tick in the box for ADS-B. The expectation that we're going to put simple ADS-B nothing in airplanes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 years ahead of time was unrealistic. There's a lot of benefit with ADS-B in. And what we're seeing is that a lot of people have recognized the benefit of getting traffic and weather and flight information into the cockpit and have upgraded their communication, navigation, and surveillance systems at one time and taken advantage of the new technologies. We've got huge technologies in communication and navigation systems. Great opportunity to add ADS-B. So we're seeing what I expected to see. Pilots who use the aircraft, who see the benefit of the data coming in, enjoy the modernization of avionics systems. Those are the ones that are equipping. The folks that are simply looking for a low-cost ADS-B solution, we are seeing and expected to see an uptick in this year's annual inspections, a higher uptick next year's annual inspections, and then in 20 and 21 we're going to get the, oh, I guess I really do need it, folks, because they're not going to be able to go where they want to go in 20 and 21. And so it really is where I expected. From an operator's perspective, you know, it's going to be like trying to go to the food court here at MGM at 12 o'clock noon, looking for a quick lunch. The queues wrap out of the food court. Well, why would we not expect that? You know, you go to Starbucks at rush hour and the line goes out the building. That's normal business. Well, you know what? If you want to wait till rush hour, there's going to be a queue.
And are you hearing from your members that are the installers that business is starting to pick up, or are people getting more and more into the mindset that, well, maybe I don't want to wait in the queue?
So there are a number of facilities who are seeing pretty good queues right now. I surveyed the membership this morning, and we're running queues right now from about 2 months to 12 months, okay? Your preferred vendor may not be available to install your system, and that's just the nature of the beast. I have facilities that you know, I talked to one last week and I said, so how long's your queue? And he says, well, how long would it take you to get here? Because he just happened to have a spot on the hangar ready today. On the other hand, I've talked to other shops, especially ones that do more scheduling type work, business aircraft, maybe business aircraft service centers. Their queues tend to be a little bit longer right now. And for those, you're looking at 6 to 12 months right now. So for the business aircraft community, if you're not scheduled today, 2019 is already filling up. Okay? So for the business aircraft and the rotorcraft community in particular, you know, you don't have a simple UAT solution. So those aircraft need to be scheduled yesterday. The Part 23, the recreational aircraft, those folks, you know, those queues tend to run from, you know, anywhere from say 30 days right now to about 180 days, depending on who the shop is.
Are you seeing a lot of, as this deadline draws closer and the technology continues to change, are you seeing prices continue to come down on the ADS-B out that will be required for the equipage, that maybe some of those folks will think, boy, I was a genius for waiting until? No.
In a word, no. You know, when you've watched, and I will tell you that every time I make that statement, our members make me a liar. So, you know, but we really haven't seen any price fluctuations for the last couple of years. You know, we've got boxes that are simpler. Installations might be a little bit simpler. But the reality is the base price is pretty much the base price. And what you're seeing is, and this goes to the operator who does nothing, that wants nothing more than to tick off the box of ADS-B. Those systems, the basic UAT systems, the price point between those units is almost negligible. When you compare the bottom line basic equipment to each and every item, okay? The more functionality you want, the more the cost is. But we're really not seeing it, and I mean, I've had this conversation with a couple of the folks that are developing products that might be in the queue, and even their price point is exactly where everybody else is. So you're really not seeing that price fluctuation, and I don't anticipate it.
You've come through the Part 23 rewrite, and that was a huge regulatory issue. What's on the regulatory horizon, Rick, for the avionics industry and for the maintainers?
So the big thing we're seeing right now is that you know, the 23 rule is written. The FAA leadership is quite aware of it, but we're not done.
Okay.
We still have a yeoman's job to go in and bring the more conservative side of the industry into the more progressive ideas. You know, DERs, who are the FAA's designees for engineering, you know, they tend to be the most conservative approach to, you know, visualizing these things. We've got to get them on board, and we've got to create the tools that allow them to investigate and promote these ideas. We're working with, AEA has been partnering with the FAA for a very long time. 17 years ago, we were a signatory on the first generation of the certification process guide, okay, our process improvement guide. And we're now on generation 4 of that. We just released it. And there's an entire working group that is based on how to communicate with the certification applicants to take advantage of this certification process improvement to streamline, to simplify, to more effectively and cost effectively certify products. You know, we're trying to build consistency. I had a conversation recently with part of our team, and when you talk to Textron, or you talk to Boeing, or you talk to our friends at Garmin, they're so mature in the certification process, they don't get a lot of turnover in the FAA oversight. Right. So their engineers are pretty consistent because they're the more mature of the certification team at the FAA. Right. On the other hand, a lot of the AEA membership are the entrepreneurs, they're the startups, they're the new concepts, the new and novel. And what we get is we get the apprentice certification engineer. Right. So we've got this revolving door of certification apprentices, as we have arguably the entrepreneur apprentices over here. Right. And it just creates this environment that it's actually counterproductive. You would expect that the more mature certification bodies would be the ones that could manage the beginner certification teams. And so you almost want to see the FAA putting the new hires with the more mature certification teams so that they can learn this, and while they use the more mature certification team to help the entrepreneurs move forward. Right. And there's actually those conversations going on within the agency because we actually have that kittywampus. You know, it's backwards almost.
One thing more, and I know you've got to run to a meeting, but are you also working on the drone regulations? Because they will have to interact with manned aircraft at some point in the probably not too distant future. And it's where a lot of the technological innovation is. And I know there's a couple of drone-focused companies here at AEA this year. Are you working in that part of the regulatory process as well?
We are. So, a drone is an airplane. So let's start with that understanding. I don't care how big it is, how small it is. It's still an airplane. And drones have been around since 13 years after the Wright brothers. Okay? So, the drone itself is not new and novel. The technologies that allow the drone to operate as they do today is new and novel. The stabilization systems, the microelectronics that have allowed for the miniaturization of them. But all of the rules are exactly the same. So when the drone becomes certified, and I know there's a couple of applicants right now that are applying for certification of their drones. Once that drone is certified under Part 21, all of 43 and all of 145 apply. Okay. So the rules are already in place, okay? The issue is for the under 55 pound, and for those aircraft that are used in commercial service, part of their operation specifications is a maintenance program. Okay?
Right.
And so we do have that. Now, once you get into the larger than 55 pound aircraft, and you start having data link communications between the ground cockpit and the flight cockpit, those things become certified, and they become managed and maintained under Part 43, as well as under Part 145. So it really, I don't fall into the trap that we have a 5-letter word for an airplane.
Right.
It's still an airplane, and all of the airplane rules still apply. What you're seeing and what you're hearing are flight operations issues. You know, oh, I want to fly in this airspace, I want to fly in that airspace. We don't get involved in that. We got lots of organizations that work on that, AOPA, NBAA, HAI. The flight operations groups, and I empathize with them because it's not an easy challenge.
Right.
But on the design, certification, and maintenance of these aircraft, those rules are already in place. And what we insist is those rules are already in place.
Well, Ric, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today. It's always a pleasure to see you. Best of luck as you move on down through that regulatory maze that I'm sure is the way it usually is.
Of course.
So.
Aero-News Network's coverage of the 61st Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Las Vegas, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors.
Are you stall smart? Ever since Orville and Wilbur took to the skies, pilots have been taught that the more airspeed you have, the better off you are. But over the last 100+ years, we've learned that's not always the case. Take stalls, for example. The common belief is that if you have sufficient airspeed, the aircraft won't stall. The fact is, an airfoil always stalls at the same critical angle of attack in relation to the relative airflow, regardless of airspeed, configuration, or weight. Learn more at aspenavionics.com.
Avidyne is the pilot-centric innovator. If you look at Avidyne's 20+ year history, we had the first moving map, full color, that had everything on it. We were the first ones to do a primary flight display for general aviation. Avidyne has lots of opportunities and things in the works that will continue the leadership role we played in the past of coming up with new concepts and always having the best user interface to them.